Well, it's a little bit early. I kind of hoping I could last till 9 o'clock here to start. The South End. The very words kind of sent a shiver up my spine. It was unexplored territory. And in a minute, I'll tell you why. There's certain trips always stick in your mind. And, in my case, I was working with the Seattle Extra Board. I think it was after military service in probably 1946. And it was on First 680, which is one of the freight trains that ran from Seattle to Portland. The engineer was a guy I'd never met before. His name was Dewey Ryan, a cocky little Irishman, and an A engine. One thing that stuck in my mind is when he left Tacoma, we were getting to an unexplored territory, a mysterious place, a long run to Portland. And when you left Tacoma, which is one of the few places that he slowed down, I had a 15-mile-an-hour curve around the head of the day at McCarver Street, about 2.5 miles out is where you got your train orders. Jimmy Frederickson used to work there. And you picked up your orders there, and I could just remember that Dewey Ryan pulling the throttle out on that big A engine right up to the ceiling and hooking her up a little bit. He picked up his orders, and he was thumbing through a whole batch of train orders. I didn't know where the hell we were going, but we got through Nelson Bennett Tunnel, and I remember seeing the lights of the drawbridge, or the suspension bridge over the Narrows. And I knew that there was 145 miles of double track with only a few curves below 60 miles an hour. And I don't remember the rest of the details of those trips, but I hope to work down there as much as possible. And getting there was a kind of a tough proposition because if you look at the map here, the red track is the Seattle district and the green is the Tacoma district. These are seniority districts. And engine and trainmen they're kind of like wild animals. They're really territorial. You have your seniority over a certain piece of track. So when the company decided they wanted to run trains through from Seattle to Portland, we had to divide up that seniority. So from Seattle to Tacoma is just over 40 miles. Tacoma to Portland is about 146 miles. So about 78% of the mileage belonged to these guys in Tacoma, who we'd never worked with. And we had about 22% of the miles. So, for instance, the 680s, there were two the first 680 and second 680, they ran at night. 3 crews on each train. You go down one day, back the next, and off the third. So the Tacoma guys had, on each 680, they had 2 of the jobs all year round, and the third one about 4 months. The Seattle guys, we had 8 months of the third crew. 401 and 2, the Night Owl, was the same way. They had 2 of the crews year-round, and we had 1 crew about 8 months of the year. So that kind of cut down the availability of that job. In addition, while each trip had, railroad, there were 3 railroads down there. Northern Pacific was the host railroad, the landlord. The Union Pacific and Great Northern were tenant railroads between the Union Pacific from Vancouver to Tacoma and the Great Northern all the way to Seattle. So each one of those railroads had a day train that had 3 crews on it. And we had, our day trade was 407 and 8. Of course, Tacoma guys had 2 crews year-round, and the 3rd crew for 4 months, and we had that 3rd crew for 8 months. But we had that every year-round. But the night train, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, we not only had to give the Tacoma guys 2 of the crews, and we only had the 3rd one for maybe 8 months, but we only had the job every 3rd year because the Union Pacific had it 1 year, the Great Northern 1 year, and we had it 1 year. And I don't have many records. My time books, why I have any, I don't know. I never thought anybody would be ever interested in what we did down there. But, I show on the record, we're talking about the night train now. We're going to talk about 401 and 2. I show 5 trips from August 20th, 1954 to the 5th of September. And then early in 1955, February and March, we had 12 round trips. That was the longest session. And then later on in the diesel era, 1958, 3 years later, because the other guys had to train in those intermediate years. So we'll talk a little bit about 400. Here's 401. This is one of Jimmy Frederickson's favorite pictures. He was on top of a boxcar in the class lead when he took that picture. And he said that the 2602 was his favorite engine. She just crossed over the Stuck River Bridge south of Auburn and heading down a slight downgrade. She's making 70 miles an hour. And the engineer's waiting at the gym there. So, getting to work on them, the other thing that made these jobs a little bit scarce is that passenger jobs generally went pretty high in seniority. You want to think about these, Seattle district and Tacoma district. It's a continuous line from the oldest engineer to the youngest fireman. And when your turn comes, you take a promotion exam, and your class generally, you get the youngest guy they kind of connive to give him this a tour of duty on a switch engine. That makes a seniority gate as engineer for him and everybody above him. So you have a seniority gate as an engineer, but you're not going to be running an engine for a while. So you have this continuous list of people from the oldest engineer to the youngest fireman. And because the demands of the service vary, they're always increasing or reducing the number of men as engineers. So when somebody gets cut back from engineer to fireman, he's a senior fireman. So he bumps somebody, and they bump the guy below him. And so with this in mind, you can see that you can only hold those runs for a short time. They're either opening up and you can get on, or you're being bumped off them by somebody when they cut the list. So in 1954, with 5 trips, I'm thinking of an engineer, I think it was Paul Rosell. Now this first diagram here, I took this off of I've got a book of blueprints of locomotives and tenders, which I would be glad to show to anybody. I brought one down with me. I took this diagram off of the official. Now this is looking at an A engine that's designed for coal. Now all of the A engines are built in 1926 and 7. They were Coburgs. So here's the deck level. I didn't show the running gear down below. I took this off of the official blueprints. Here's the coal pile and these V gates back into the coal. Here on each side are what we call tank legs, where we stored blocking and signal equipment, odds and ends. Here's handrails. There's the worm for the coal. This is the deck. On an A engine, the deck was 89 inches above the rail. 7 feet 5 inches above the rail. The Tipton was built a little lower. Her deck was only about 74 inches. It was not 7 inches shorter, 72 inches, or 74 inches, yeah. It's a little more of a compact. So when we went to work in the Horton Street Roundhouse at 11 o'clock, it was important. I always tried to get on the engine before the engineer did. He of course had to really read the bulletins, because on the registry you had to put the number of the highest number bulletin, which is the latest one, and you're responsible for knowing what it said. But I tried to get on the engine first, and it's not really we want to blow any smoke up his tailpipe or anything, but you had to kind of, engineers were superior to firemen. So I made it a point when he got out to the A engine to throw my grip up on the deck, climb up there and start, I had a couple globs of waste put on it by the engineer's controls and one by mine, and usually when the hoghead came out, some of them just threw their grip up on the gangway, and I'd hand them down a hand oiler and a glob of waste so they could oil out of the engine. And while I did that, of course, I made it a point to make sure the deck was clean. If I had to hose it down with hot water or blow it with air, I would do that. You want to show the next one, Gary? Here's an oil burner, and this is the same deal. Here's the deck here. It's just the deck level, and here's the 2 tank legs. Trying to get this thing to work here. Yeah, these are kind of a ladder. Here's the oil compartment instead of the coal gates, and here's the handrails off the tender, the tank legs for storage. This device here it makes the height of a bench. This is a sandbox, because on the oil burners, of course, you had to sand the flues out when the engine was working on a steep grade or coming out of a deep. When you're working the engine hard, you had instead of a fire door, we'll see it in a moment, you had to sand the flues out. And you could put a cushion on it, made it a good seat, actually. And all the oil burners were equipped with this sandbox. You had a kind of a grocery-style scoop to be reached down in that sandbox, and when you're working steam really hard, you pour that sand through this little peephole where the fire door was, and you'd sand the flues out. I don't know what it did with the environment to have all that sand flying out the stack with oil scum on it, but that was an important part. And another thing we did, you had to make sure that you had the right amount of fuel, oil, and water. And the fuel oil was heated by coils in the fuel oil container, which on the A engine was about 5,500 gallons. That valve was under the fireman's control. The best way, the criteria for getting the right heat, if you could hold the back of your hand against that fuel tank comfortably. The oil was just usually about right for the atomizer. And you went back over the top of the tank to check the fuel oil to make sure it was up there, because you had a long run. And then back to the tender for the water supply. If you back up to the other deal, you see on the right side here, this, and I drew in extra. Picture that as about a 4 or 5 inch diameter pipe with a slot down the middle and a little marker thing. In about 1946 or so, they decided it was nice to have a gauge to show how much water was in the tender. Before that, you had to climb up over the top and go back and let the spout hook down and pull it up. It could be in the middle of the night, you know, see how much water was left. So they put this thing out, and especially on a coal burn, you're crawling over the coal pile. Hopefully the stoker isn't running and sucking coal out from under your feet. So to avoid that, they put these water gauges on right after World War II. And they were pretty accurate, but you still went back to because going to Portland with 402, water was a real concern. The MT was always kind of stingy with their tenders, you know, like little 9,300, 9,600 gallons. There's the Great Northern with the big Vanderbilt tanks, you know, 12, 15,000 gallons. But the A engines, they finally got a little better. They tenders held 15,000 gallons. But you wanted to make sure that the hostlers left put that water right up to the very top, because it could be, with a heavy train, it could be critical to make Centralia. Now, if you look at the timetable, I've got one from 1942. I don't have anything from the 50s, but they have a W at each station where water was available on the main line. And between Seattle and Portland, the first water was at Auburn on the main line. And the Great Northern freight trains, so they had a lot of delays of interbay and a heavy train. They would take water at Auburn, because while there was water at Tacoma on the timetable, it wasn't on the main line. It was in the roundhouse, and you'd have to cut the engines off and spend a lot of time getting to the water plug. So for all practical purposes, Tacoma was not a water stop. The next one was about 17 miles south, a little place called Ketron. Now, you probably know where Ketron is due to the little adventure of the airplane here a couple weeks ago. They crashed into Ketron Island. There was a station right across from Ketron Island that had water. And the next water was between the St. Clair and East Olympia, Cairo. And of course, then the final stop was at Centralia. But you wanted to make Centralia on that passenger train. You didn't want, you already had, on Forward 1 or 2, you had about 15 regular stops and 4 or 5 flag stops between Seattle and Portland. So a 7-hour schedule, the average speed is only about 27, 28 miles an hour. But I can assure you that we were beating the daylights out of those A engines to make the time, and most of the time as fast as we could run, because every station stop consumed time. At Centralia, we had 20 minutes on the time card. I can remember loading fish for an hour into the express reefers. You'd come in there on time and leave an hour late. Imagine what you have to do. So your average speed of 27 or 8 miles an hour, the speedometers, when they worked on those A engines, went to 80 miles an hour, and they had that needle against the pin a lot. So it was very important to have an adequate water supply. This is a picture of the fireman seat on an A engine. Of course, we used those engines in freight too, and the head brakeman had somewhere arrived. There's about that seat is about 3 feet long there. And so on the passenger train, when the brakemen are riding back in the coaches, I put a block behind that, take that cushion, you can see it flat there, and I'd stand it up against the back wall of the cab and put a block behind it. Then we could get we had a square naugahyde cushion, 18 or 20 inches square, pretty thick, and we'd set that square cushion in front of it. Kind of made it just like a throne, you know, pretty comfortable. And we had the oil firing, of course, they were all oil burners. I never did fire an engine under coal. They were all, not all of them were converted to oil, but everything we used on the south end was an oil burner. So it was pretty comfortable. You had your throttle and your damper control there. I kind of indicated that. And here's the back head of an A engine. This is a coal burn. You can see over here on the right, this wheel. Those engines, you look at the blueprints, it says Franklin Precision Reverse Gear. And ordinarily you had a kind of like just a lever, a Johnson bar, full forward, full reverse. But they thought for passenger service they were going to have a really fine-tuned cutoff for running fast. So they put a worm gear on a wheel, so you had to crank that wheel around to go from forward to reverse. Very poor setup for if you had any switching to do. And you know, as I remember, I don't remember using that. Maybe we did. It's one of the things I can't remember. I thought they might have taken it off, but I really can't remember. But you can see the automatic independent brake valve. Of course, this is the fire door of the simplex stoker. Up here is where you tuck the oil cans, the towel pots to keep the valve oil warm. One of these gauges is a back pressure gauge. A engines have what we call an exhaust steam injector. It was a neat rig, but they didn't use it very much. The A engines had them, and I think a couple of W5s had them. But apparently the maintenance was a little bit too much. But the nice part of it was that you used back pressure to pump water into the boiler. So if you did it right, the back pressure from working the engine would pump enough water to replace the steam. It was proportional. But it was under the control of the engineer who had a lot of other things to do. Now the Timken did not, there's the back, that's the 26. It doesn't show, this is the fireman's side. It doesn't show too much. Now here's the back head Timken, and when I spoke about the oil burner, here, this, make sure this is, here, right here, see this peephole. This took place with the fire door in the coal burner. You can see that hole there. It's about 2 or 3 inches in diameter. When the engine was working on a hard pull or uphill, that's where you fed the sand in to clean out, scour out the flues. And the firemen had to do that 3 or 4 times maybe on a trip to keep the engine steaming, but you had to get that oil scum out of the flues and the superheater units. So the engineer, in a sense, what we call working the water, keeping the water at the right supply, the right level. And not enough water, if you got too close to the crown sheet, you're flirting with an explosion. And too much water, you're maybe sucking it down to the superheater units, and that we didn't want that. So the engineer had to work the water. Now the Timken had a Worthington feed water heater that was also under the control of the engineer. These railroads like to give the engineer that extra duty of what we call working the water, but generally speaking, we preferred letting the fireman work the water because he had less to worry about. And by the time I got on the Timken, and I made several trips with it, especially in February, March of '55, I made 3 trips on the Timken. The fireman worked the water. We had 2 injectors on because they took the Worthington feed water heater off in 1951. There's a little sidebar, and I don't know if the modelers were interested in this. If you go onto the website, Jan showed you the website in her display, and you click on equipment, then steam locomotives, and they'll bring up something that says locomotive cards. You scroll on and then you click on that, and you'll get a list of all the locomotives by number. And if you're building a model, you can scroll down and it gives the whole history of that locomotive, what appurtenances were put on it, when they were put on, and what appurtenances were removed from it. And you can get if you want an accurate model, say like W3s, they had coffin feed waters, and they had a little pump, sort of a turbine pump down on the firebox, and some modifications of the smoke box, which are evident in photographs. But those coffin feed pumps were not put on the engines until 1929 and 30, so they went a long time. In other words, depending on what area you're showing it, you would show a different equipment. So anyway, when we started on the trip on 402, like I say, you get on the engine first, and then the hoghead gets on. Of course, everybody wanted to learn to run the engine. The first time I was down in August and September of '54, Paul Roselle was the engineer. I don't know, where is Paul? Can you find him? Yeah. There he is. This is East Auburn, I think, on 25 or number 1, and he's talking to Fred Feldman, the conductor. I don't know who that Yahoo is over on the right there. He's dressed up like a steam engine here, and they're running on a diesel. Anyway, Paul was my mentor when I first went firing. He made my student trips. I made one of them with him. Anyway, when I first went down on the 402 and 54, I'm pretty sure he was the engineer, and he was pretty good at, not all of them were good, but letting the fireman run the engine, and of course getting that experience was pretty important. So when you're set up by it, usually the road foreman would be easier to be okay. We had one little incident on that first series of trips. I think it was then. We were coming up on 401. And we were following first 679, the NV freight train. It was this time of year, fall, August, September, get a little bit of mist now and then. It wasn't really foggy, a little misty. Getting up toward Castle Rock, here the yellow block and then a red block. And here's a flagman out there, and he says, he gets on the engine, he says, I'm going to head you in here at Castle Rock, and we're going to let you by. We got a hot box, and we're going to put the pressure elements here. Okay, we line in and pull in and line back. It's about a 5,800 foot long siding, still at, I think, at Castle Rock. This is on what we call the westward siding, or northbound. We get up to the other end, there's no markers, no train. When we get up a little toward the end of the siding, there's an old gondola sitting there smoking in front of us on the siding. They'd set the bad order out and taken off and left the flagman behind, left us trapped into the siding. Paul Roselle, he had a kind of a short temper anyway. He was pretty wild. What are we going to do? We don't have any radios. They have diesels on the south end, but each radio had its own frequency. They couldn't talk to each other. What we did, we backed down very carefully and stopped just to clear at the south end of the siding. The conductor goes to the phone and dispatcher says, okay, he says, as soon as 671 goes by, it's a Great Northern, and he gave the engine number. As soon as they go by, you got permission to line out, back out without flagging. So we do that and get back out on the main line and take off. By this time, we're 20, 30 minutes late. Do our work at Castle Rock and all of the other points. Anyway, we pull up, finally come tearing down Napavine Hill, and here's another yellow block, and here's a red block, and pretty soon the Great Northern flag was out there. And what's the matter now? Well, first 79 had slipped by us, Lahalos Junction. When it slipped by, they were coming down Napavine, which is a 1% grade, and it's all fast track down there. All those curves are good for 60 and plus, 60 miles an hour. So they're going to beat hell, and these cars are jumping up and down, and one of them just had the right heights, and they uncoupled. Of course, the air went in emergency, and they had to stop. So we finally got back together, and the parade started. By the time we left Centralia, we were pretty hopelessly late, and the freight trains had all taken off ahead of us. And made a pretty tough trip. So that trip really stuck in my mind. And Paul was pretty good about it. He did, in those first trips, I got a pretty good experience in handling a passenger train, and 402 was pretty demanding. You think of all the station stops that you have to make from going 75 and 80 miles an hour, and most of the stations, you came within a car length or so, for the baggage and express, it was okay. But we had marks. And of course, being a night train, you had to have visible marks, a good fence post or a street light or something. If everything, we had to learn those marks. And coming into the station at 75, 80 miles an hour, as the speed decreased, you had to kind of kick off the brakes. Now, on a freight train, you can't graduate off the brakes as the speed drops because they release. But we had passenger equipment, so you could go over to running and back to the lap, cut off on the brake valve, and you could just gradually reduce brake pressure, cylinder pressure as the speed dropped. And the nice trick was coming into the final stop to put the brake valve over to release and then back to lap just as the rear brake shoes were holding the train to a stop, and it was very smooth. Another thing you had to do is make sure to lay sand down under the drivers as you came to a stop, because you're going to need it taken off. So all these little tricks to running an engine, I managed to. Of course, Paul was, like I say, he was always pretty good about it, but he liked to be, he liked to nag, get a little dig in. He said, get to Centralia, he'd say, well, he says it's a dirty trick to play on the passengers, but you can come over here and fumble around in your usual incompetent manner. So I got a lot of experience running the engine on that job, and got to where I could do it pretty well. And that leads to, here's 401 at Tacoma. I don't know if that's one of Jimmy's. It's hard to get pictures of that. It's in the summer, of course, the sun was up by the time I got to Tacoma. We got some pretty nice, that's a nice shot of the 2601. diesel operation. There's one more little story I probably shouldn't tell this. I can't really remember. Mercifully, I can't remember the name of this engineer. He was a Tacoma guy. By the way, a lot of the time I worked with Tacoma engineers because the unions didn't collaborate on that. In other words, when the mileage determined that it should switch over from one district to the other, you might have a Tacoma district engineer and a Seattle district fireman, which I did, or a Seattle district engineer and a Tacoma fireman. So you get out with some guy that you've never seen before. And I was working a job when I'm making these 12 trips in February or March of '55. Here this hoghead shows up. His name is, by the way, the latest Main Streeter mentions this guy's name, Joseph Dobek. Replinger's article on the Gate Local, he mentions this engineer. And I'd never met this Dobek, never seen him before in my life. Big, tall Czechoslovakian guy. We get prep the engine in Seattle. First stop was Kent. And he made the station stop and taken off and got up onto the Green River Bridge. He's just getting wound up there, and he looks over, he sees me with my real comfortable seat, and he motioned me over, and he says, "Hey kid, you want to try your luck over here for a while?" "Well, sure, you know." So, the guy went over there and sat in the fireman seat. He never hovered over me, never gave me any advice, and I ran the engine all the way to Kelso before he took over. So you only got those guys once in a while. And then there were other types. I can't remember, mercifully, I've forgotten his name now. I knew it for a while. He was a little skinny guy, Tacoma engineer, and of course, he wasn't going to let me run the engine, but he was kind of a party guy. He had at least one son that was a hoghead, and I understand they shared the favors of a lady in Portland, and they seldom went to bed. You know, that was a night job. Got at 7:30 in the morning, and I don't think he had. This one night that I was with him, I don't think he'd gone to bed. And he was complaining, and it was a dark and stormy night, and the wind was blowing. And, we took off from Portland, and coming across the Columbia River, that wind comes sailing down, and he slammed the door, the side window shut. He said, "Damn it, I'm freezing to death." He said, got him to stop the bad door. He says, "Kid, you ever run one of these engines?" And I said, "A few times." "Oh, come on over here." He said, "I'm freezing to death." So he went over there, and of course he promptly went to sleep. So I was kind of running the engine and firing it all. I got to Centralia and spotted for water, and that was the tricky part. When you spotted for water, you had to get it within 5 or 6 feet of the right place so the water spout would reach into the tender. You may notice in the poster we got for that, I'm actually in the picture there, out there taking water on the 2602. Anyway, I figured at Centralia, this guy, he did wake up enough to sand the flues out going up Napa Line. And I remember he got to Centralia, I figured he'd take over. He said, "Oh," he says, "you run her for a while more." And of course, then he was dozing off and waking up. And every once in a while, I had to go over and adjust the oil valve. So it was okay. But coming into Nelson Bennett Tunnel, it was a little bit smoky up there. I thought, geez, I better go over and cut that oil back a little bit. And oh, the hell with it. I'll just drop her down a couple notches and widen the throttle. So we sailed through there. When he got to Tacoma, he was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to finish the last 40 miles. So I was courting my wife-to-be at that time. And what I would do is go up to her place in Capitol Hill and snooze on the couch down in the rec room for a while. Then when I got up, we'd do something. I got a call. It was the road foreman, Al Burrows, and he says, "As a passenger filed a complaint about smoke coming into the cars in the Nelson Bennett Tunnel. I want to find out what's going on." I thought I'd better evade. Well, I said we were right on time, and the engine was steaming pretty good, steaming okay. He said, "Man," I said, "maybe you better call the hog in and see what he had. He might have noticed something." Well, he said, I called him, but his wife won't wake him up. It was just a kind of a commentary on the way things were that, we never heard any more about it. Just like we never heard any more about being stuck in the siding of Castle Rock. That was the glory of working on the South End in those days. Well, eventually time marches on and we finally got to the diesel era. And like I say, my records are not complete. But we did, here we go from 1955 to 58, January the 30th to the 24th of February, which is quite a while. I was able to hold 401 and 2 in the diesel era. 6500s usually. I've got all the lists of the engines on those. I kept track of that. And of course, working on the South End in those days with a diesel was pretty easy. I can't remember the engineers that I worked with in those days on the diesel. And like I say, the time books didn't have a place for the engineer's name. So but it was pretty much the same schedule, same kind of work. Now here's train 4. I can only remember holding 407 and 8 for a while, and I don't have any record of it. I can't remember what year it was, but I do remember I had a Tacoma engineer at that time. Very congenial guy. He had a beautiful, I never saw his home. It was on Malachet Bay over on the peninsula. And he had no kids either. That might have accounted for his congenial disposition. But all I remember about him is that I get to Centralia, he put me over on his seat. He'd get on the fireman's seat. He had a little styrofoam box that he had his veggie lunch in, and he'd munch away in his lunch. And 407 and 8 was of course, you had to be right at the top of the fireman's list to hold that. That was the #1 job because you went down and back the same day. You went to work around 11 something in the morning. You were down in Portland about 3 in the afternoon, 3 something. You're only in Portland a couple hours. You came right back, and then you had 2 days off. We had 3 crews on there, so you only worked 10 days a month, and you made 4,000 miles. So that was a pretty darn nice job. And of course, we look back on it, it was a lot of trains, but you look at it today, there's even more traffic. Before Amtrak took over in 1987, we protected those jobs, and I didn't go with Amtrak. I could have, but I was able to hold the passenger pool at Portland where we worked. We had 3 trains that we worked, and we did 3 round trips in 5 days and had 3 days off. So our traffic on the south end is even heavier now. We still have the Union Pacific, and of course, the Great Northern is there as part of the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe. There was one other job that I was able to hold that was kind of interesting to hope in. That train, we had 2 crews on there. The train didn't run on Sunday, but we went to work in the morning, around 7 something in the morning. It's a 130-mile run, of course, and we owned 40 miles of that. You can figure the math on that. But I did have a Seattle engineer the whole time. I was able to hold it a couple of trips in July of '55, and then later that summer I got in a full 11 trips, which is a little over a month on it. The engineer was Al Barsadian. I don't know if Gary can find him there, but there he is, standing in front of an A engine. You can see the big pipe being the yellow steam injector above that driving wheel there. But Al Barsadian, he was another guy who was long time. He was hired out in March of 1918, wasn't promoted until 1943. Paul Roselle was hired in 1912 and not promoted to 42. And those guys were without a job for a long time during the Depression. You can imagine that. But Al was a neat guy. He spoke in a whisper, and he was almost like I am, stone deaf. He knew a lot about air brakes and held patents on some air brakes, but the trainmen said they didn't like him on a freight train because he was a pretty rough hammer. Anyway, this is a picture of him on the front of a Class A. The engine we had was a 2261, and it's oil burner. And in the summertime, if they had one available, we'd get a GP9. If you didn't need any steam heat, they'd put a Jeep on it. And my records show that we had 11 trips in August of '55. I had 5 on the 2261, and then we had the 220 and the 230, 2261 and 229. And I got to run the engine on that, usually on the second half. Going down to Hoquiam on the branch line, that 2261 would rock and roll. And if we look back, and those old heavy coaches were just floating along there. But that was a really nice time. I enjoyed working and of course that job was terminated, about a year later. You had the last run. But you went down to Hoquiam, you had a couple hours, not very long, and came back. We had one crew that worked Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Another crew that worked Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. There was no train on Sunday. There's a picture there, just got floating around. I can't see the station there. Well, that's about all of the memories that I can dredge up on working the South End. I can't tell you, it's hard to describe the feeling, but we really could, even the weird hours, we kind of enjoyed it. And it was really something to get a hold of the throttle of an A engine. And the Timken. Beautiful machines. I remember R.J. Smith was an engineer on the Great Northern after the merger. I got pretty well. He was the kind of a guy who was just lived for the railroad. I remember during post-merger days, he'd come into Interbay in the middle of the night, and RJ would be tied up and talking to the roundhouse foreman instead of going home. And we'd get out in the parking lot on a summer night and railroad for 30 minutes before we drove home. But RJ, he had a saying. He said that, he said every trip was a little adventure. And so it was. I thought I could fill out more time talking about this, but I've run out of it. I do have the blueprints of locomotives and tenders. There were 2 sets of them at Livingston when I left my job as a road foreman. Nobody wanted them, so I took them. Anybody wants to look at these and talk it over, I've got them. They don't have them with me here, but in the room. Anybody have any questions about these little adventures that we had? Yes?
Yeah, when the diesels came along, what sort of training program did the railroad have to train you to run the diesels versus the steam?
Well, you really didn't need much intuition to run a diesel. You had 8 notches. With the steam engine, you had to get the cutoff just right to get it, really singing and most efficient. It was kind of intuitive. But with the diesel, you had 8 notches, and that was it. So I guess that.
Did they give you like a written? Did you have to do like a written test or anything like that, or did you have to have like somebody to kind of follow you there?
Well, with the steam engine, when you open the throttle, it was kind of there was a certain flexibility to it. With a diesel, the amperage came up and you dug right in. And some of the old guys had a little bit of trouble with that. I remember the conductor talking to one guy, Grover Hefner. He says, Grover, he says, those cushions back in the caboose, the long cushions? Yeah. He says, well, you take it a little easier starting here, pulling the buttons off those cushions. The guys with the diesel, the diesel would dig right in, whereas the steam engine, there was a certain flexibility and softness to it. But no, I think these guys found that, I know a lot of guys that were getting up there in age, diesel gave them a new lease on life, because running a steam engine took a lot out of you, even sitting there as the engineer. But the diesel, for one thing, it was a lot cleaner, and you had your speedometers and everything. None of the A engines had speedometers, but they seldom worked. They went to 80 miles. And the Q6s had no speedometers. But it was pretty exciting stuff, get that thing up to 80 miles an hour. When I was first married, I shouldn't tell this about my wife, but I'm in the doghouse all the time anyway, so we hadn't been very, very low. It was on this 422 and 3. It was in August 54. We had been married a couple months, and I talked to Alvar Sabian. I said, my new bride, I said, I'd like to give her a ride on the engine. Well, he says, come on, have her. We lived west of Kent, up on the highway. The 2 houses that I built are still there, but the South 260th. But she always had to do a drive down the hill. Of course, it was nighttime, but there was a place to park at Kent, which was the last stop on the 422. So she could have sat on my lap and run that little 2261 down through Black River at about 80 miles an hour. But she, I guess, decided that that really wasn't too good an idea. She never did show up. I don't know whether I've been maybe that's why I've been in the doghouse. All in all, it was kind of fun. Sometimes I feel guilty of a bachelor's degree and everything. I never amounted to very much, but we had a lot of fun doing it. We lived in a lot of interesting places. And if you old-timers lived in Minnesota, we had a lot of stories about adventures like Minnesota and Montana. There were a lot of tough times, but there were very few dull moments. Anybody have more questions? Okay, Chris, I can see you.
Did 401 and 402 run on the Prairie Line? And
not that I remember. The Great Northern ran their day train on the Prairie Line up till World War II. Yeah, but not before. I think the Owl went on the Point Line the whole time. Yeah. Any more?
The water gauge on the tenders, was that just a steel pipe with a dipstick, or how'd that work?
The what?
The water gauge on the tenders.
It was a kind of a pulley and cable device. I think they had a float in the tank. It was kind of a crude device. And I think there were a couple of pulleys in the cable, and they had a little indicator in the slotted pipe. It was fairly accurate, you know, when you had, and you needed a certain amount, you know, say you got down to East Olympia or say Cairo, which is a water stop. That was the last one before Centralia. You had to have so much water. You didn't want to run out of water because you got to keep water over that crown sheet, you know. The old phrase you use, cut and run, you know, it's kind of a definition of cowardice. It was kind of, it may have come from the railroad. If you got low on water and couldn't make it, you'd stop and cut the engine off because it didn't take as much water to run light as it did with a train. And you'd run to the next water stop because you couldn't bear that crown sheet. You have to drop the fire. So the water was critical, and of course, the fireman on the Timpton, the fireman worked the water because the Worthington pump that they had for the hoghead, they took that off in 1951. Like I say, that if you go on the website and get that category of locomotive cards, and many of the modelers would be interested in that too, because a lot of changes in appurtenances and equipment are noted for each locomotive. Every locomotive had a different story. See, the W3s all came out with injectors when they first built, 1913 to 20. But the coffin feed water pumps were put on in 1929 and 30. And then some devices were removed. Most of the A engines were converted to oil in about 1946 and 7. But there was those locomotive cards. Each locomotive has its own card, and you can determine the equipment that was taken on or added and any modifications. I got into that just in the last couple of weeks because I'm kind of interested. It's just like the Franklin reverse gear. They had it on the Q6s, and I remember working that, but I can't remember on the A engines. I guess we used it. But, okay, any more? Yeah, Tim.
How would you put the sand into the firebox?
The what?
The sand into the firebox to clean the flues. How would you put that in? Just by hand?
Well, it's like, you know, those old grocery scoops they used to have for grain and flour and stuff. Kind of little. You have dip that, you know, that box on a tender, which you could use as a seat. You know, you could sit on it, put a cushion on it. You lifted up the lid and there's sand, you dip that scoop in there, and you saw that hole in the cover over the fire door. You just, when the engine working hard, you just feed that through there and suck that sand through the fluids and scour them out. I don't know if there's any washing hanging on the line when you were out there. It would be pretty rough because that sand, the kernel would have a little bit of scum on it. You know? Yes, sir.
Did you ever have to use dynamic brakes coming down Napa Line, or was it purely stretch braking?
Well, I think stretch braking was kind of a diesel era. The Great Northern had a guy named called him Brake Shoe Bob because he dragged brakes all the time. And when you had to make steam while shoveling coal and everything, I don't think they did much stretch braking. Those little sandbox on the tender, you know, on the sides. Take a W3, they were counterbalanced. Really, you couldn't counterbalance for every speed because the counterbalance center of gravity couldn't be matched exactly with all the rods. And so the W3s were designed to really best at 35 or 40. But coming down that line, there's no telling how fast you were going. Really bright shoe, I worked with him. He was firing for some crazy Polish gentleman. Louis Ware, he couldn't pronounce his name in Polish, so he changed it. He says, a lot of times I'd get back and sit on that sandbox because the tender rode a lot better than the engine did. Pretty wild. He remembers some coming down during the war, coming down Napa Line, God knows how fast. And he's coming into Chehalis Junction, all of a sudden they realized 402 was standing at the depot with all the baggage carts out there. Rennie was running the engine for the hoghead. He says, Louie, what am I going to do? He says, you'll never stop. He says, just keep going and blow the whistle. And everybody scattered and they went through it. Everybody, nobody got hurt, and as during the war, nothing was ever said about it. I guess now managements, they've got cameras in the cab, they don't even know what you're thinking. So in those days, we got away with a lot. And, granted, yeah, it was pretty wonderful stuff. Like Bob Smith said, every trip was a little adventure. Well, I guess that's all I got.